Are you connecting all the dots on the journey to your inner wisdom? Are you looking for a fresh perspective on the messages you've been asking for?
So who doesn't want to be happier, healthier, wealthier, and wiser, and be able to make life's choices with confidence because they finally see the signs? We know you do.
I'm Angela Coulter.
And I'm Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
We're two conscious journeyers dedicated to turning over those rocks and helping you on your personal intuitive sleuthing mission of evolution in our multi-dimensional hologram.
And that includes Earth too.
Yes, it does. Welcome to Solving Me, our conscious puzzle-solving podcast, where we look at the natural relation between your life experiences and their meaning in the bigger picture, from the most mundane to the most overwhelming.
So what do we mean by all this? Well, have you ever thought that getting a flat tire and twisting your ankle could be related? And maybe a message about what's preventing you from getting that awesome, high-paying job you would love. Believe it or not, it's all connected.
Want to know more? Come on and let's get sleuthing. See what comes up in this episode, because it might just be about you. Welcome to episode 29. So today's topic is about what we call the three unders.
Right?
Underutilized, underappreciated, and undervalued, right? Undervalued, underappreciated, and underutilized. We always just call them the three unders. So that's why I always have a hard time remembering them. But these are big messages in terms of, I mean, you and I have gone through that, looking at parts of that for ourselves, but we have seen it with a lot of people that we know. And it's a very common identity for people to have.
It really is. And it becomes such a topic of conversation socially. It used to be, gripes around the water cooler about, gossiping and all this kind of stuff. And now it's, oh, woe is me. And, I'm just overburdened because no one appreciates me. And nobody values the job that I do, or, I could do so much better of a job than so-and-so does. And all of this just mean that's what they use to just not pay me what I'm worth.
And also then you have situations where people feel like they're ignored, like at work or at home, and they don't even say anything though. There are those who don't say anything. They just let it happen.
Right.
And they accept it
Right.
as a fact of their own life instead of recognizing it's a message for underlying energies of what they hold about themselves.
Right. And I mean, especially the parent role.
Mm-hmm.
Who feels totally appreciated as a parent? It usually doesn't happen until you have adult children, and then they have children, and then things get sorted. But
sometimes.
Sometimes. Exactly. Sometimes. But yes, that's that suffering and silence kind of thing.
And martyrdom, which we've done I think we did an episode on that, martyrdom and sacrifice, but this is all tied into that. And yet how many times we've seen within ourselves, with other people that we know, who get exasperated because they're like, well, I'm just completely underappreciated.
Yeah.
Or they feel ignored, right? So you feel ignored, you feel underappreciated. You feel like people don't access you with expertise that you know that you have. Well, that's being feeling like you're underutilized, right? Or undervalued, not being put to the forefront. Mm-hmm. So then you get used to that. Well, then guess what? Like you were saying, it gets connected to then being underpaid and sacrificing. So in your personal life, when it's not your job, like you're saying, like the roles of martyrdom and parenthood go hand in hand in our society.
Yes. They do. Or they can't.
They can't. They most often do, let's just say, because it's an expected thing in our in culture. So when we look at that, it comes down to looking at where you believe you're undeserving and unworthy to be recognized, to be utilized, to be valued and appreciated.
Yeah. Yes. which then translates into pay.
Yes. So if you're having that issue, and sometimes we don't even consciously think about that. We think about it in terms of saying, God, he just never listens to me. How many times have you said that about a spouse? Or she never listens to me. Or when you say that about your kids or your parents, they just never listen to me. Why do I even bother talking? Right?
Yep.
Or why do I? So,
Right.
I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing and boil about it under the surface and then create long-term irritation, which then gets covers this up by more layers to uncover to get to the core of what it is about yourself that's irritating you. So when we hold
Right.
that, when we
And
hold that
you know,
energy, go ahead.
whenever I run into places where I just feel under something, whether it's underappreciated, underutilized, undervalued, um, I have to sit there and say, well, where am I not seeing the value for myself? Why am I not, why am I looking externally for that validation of my value or my contribution or that I can do certain things? And I usually find that it's it's coming from me, which isn't that what we always say? It's not what you think
Right.
it is. And that
Exactly.
these are just those big messages back to ourselves to say it starts at home. Appreciate, value, and utilize yourself. And then
Mhm.
these things tend to sort themselves out.
Yes.
But if you don't see those messages, then it has to get louder.
Until it gets to a place where you get so frustrated or so depressed or so angry that then you go
Right.
back to our anger episode from a couple episodes ago.
Right. Right.
And say, yeah, I've got to, like, how do I stop projecting that anger and look back on myself? Well, I'm frustrated and angry because I've allowed that for myself, or I've created that for myself because I believed I needed to be valued that way, or that I need to be valued a different way. And that having whatever the martyrdom, the silent sacrifice was valuable because I didn't believe that, getting to the self responsibility statement, because I didn't believe that of
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
Oh, that's a big pile right there that we just bing, bing,
Right.
bing, bing.
Well, and if you attach it all the way back to our very first episode of, you've said you want these goals, you've said you want these things in your life. So if you come to a different place of valuing and appreciating yourself, then you're more in line with those goals. And these feelings of undervalued, underappreciated, underutilized are simply saying, you need to tweak a few things if you really want these goals.
Yes. Yes.
And
And
if we don't listen,
go
it
ahead.
just pushes us further from the goals.
Yes. And the other part is sometimes we adopt it as part of our identity because
Yes.
then it's easier than having to overcome that. It's easier. We believe it's easier than looking into the mirror to say, oh, look at that self-loathing or look at that self-doubt, right? I'd rather just identify with always being undervalued, always being underutilized, always being underappreciated, and then being able to complain about it, because then that's how I get attention and that's how I'll get better appreciated, because then I have to sort of, what do they call that? Fishing for compliments kind of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you tear yourself down so that someone will contradict you and build you back up, subversive, that
Yes.
backhanded compliment kind of thing. Yeah,
Yes. And so
absolutely.
that's all about lack of self-love, lack of self-confidence, self-loathing. So those are the things that we're uncomfortable with. So when you talk to somebody who says, oh no, I'm fine, I love myself, just nobody else sees my value.
Right. Right.
I always laugh about that because I'm like, maybe you need to look a little more closely at that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I would. Yep. That's a good example. That's a very good example.
Yeah. And so the other thing is so we don't even realize that we actively incorporate that into our identity. And I don't want to call it a cop out because that sounds like judgment, but it's almost like a shield of protection, right? So we put that in as a shield of protection. So then it says, well, then I'm guaranteed that I don't have to look at it because I'll just continue to complain and put it out there and have to go external to get the validation of people saying, oh, no, I appreciate you and all that kind of stuff. So what happens if you actually put yourself in a situation where that stops, where you actually do get valued and appreciated and utilized? And then you have nothing to complain about.
Right. That's, yeah, you have to figure out who you are.
Yeah. So what happens if you are?
You have to
And
really
that
start.
sounds like an easy question to ask, right? Because you would think we would say, "Oh, that would be great." Really though? Because I've seen situations where people have done that. Somebody we know, we were talking about when we were prepping before we got on here, that had, been complaining about a job where they were underutilized, underappreciated, undervalued. Complained. Finally, looked for another job, got another job, and hesitated to take that other job because I don't know. I don't know. I'm sort of afraid to take that other job. Wow. And I'm like, but you've been wanting to, like it was better pay, it was the pay you wanted, her she wanted, it was the kind of position she wanted, where she had the kind of visibility she wanted. And she was really hesitant to do it. And wow, it was like a big step. But the good part was that she was in enough of self-awareness practice to say, wow, what am I balking at? Because this is everything I've wanted.
Right. Absolutely.
And when she
Yeah.
got
It's like I can step up and
Mhm.
show and be that value, that appreciation and that utilization.
And you can do
I
it
mean,
without
that's
being,
really that's a big shift.
yeah. And you can do it without being burdened, because sometimes people hold themselves back because they believe that actually being fully valued, utilized, and appreciated would mean that they were burdened with a whole bunch of responsibilities that they didn't want.
Right. And that there was a price to pay.
Yes. Yes. So that's the key. So if you're feeling that way, so here's the thing. Also, if you get to a place where you recognize that you have been holding that energy, because if it's been in your life pervasively, you've absolutely been holding that energy to reflect back to you of being that underutilized, underappreciated, and undervalued, that when you shift it and you say, okay, I'm ready, like I'm ready, willing, and able to accept that being valued. I am valuable. I deserve to be appreciated. I deserve to be valued. Did I say the same thing twice? I don't know. Anyway, you know what I mean. And then the next step is, well, okay, am I so ready for it that I'm ready to leave the situation I'm in that reflected it back to me is under blank, to
Right.
actually be valued and appreciated and utilized. So that's where and that was the issue with the person that we're talking about, is that she had this hesitation of, well, that's sort of scary. But
Exactly.
she was ready to leave it. But that was the familiar, the evil we know, quote unquote, right? That we always say about that, like it's easier to let
Yes.
go of. It's harder to let go of the evil we know to the unknown, because the ego gets scared about the unknown. And it's like, what if it's worse? No, well, what if it's better? Well, sometimes that's even a bigger fear. So those are the things to remind ourselves with, and to really take a good look in the mirror if you're feeling that undervalued, the underutilization.
Or know someone that is.
Yes, who has that all the time and
Know
underappreciated.
someone who, right.
Yeah. So, you know, look at what that means to you. Look at where you feel about that, and look at really, again, and you can say, I feel great about myself, except if you have that really flow, being mirrored back to you, there's obviously something that's very important under the surface that you might not be looking at otherwise about your own value.
Yes.
And that goes hand in hand with being willing to change to allow for that.
Right.
So this is a big one, and it takes a lot, as you and I both know, takes a lot of reflection. So report back and let us know. Thanks for listening to us on Solving Me. If you found this podcast helpful, make sure to subscribe so you get notice every time we post a new episode.
And for a short time, we have a special bonus for you. Go to solvingme.net to download your free ebook, which outlines the next level of conscious solutions for your inner investigation.
Be sure to help us spread the word. Share us with others you know who want to solve the puzzles of their everyday life through the filter of expanded consciousness and have fun doing it.
One more thing. Do you have some puzzling life circumstances where you feel blocked and you'd like our take on what's going on? Send us your conscious puzzle at connect@solvingme.net, and maybe you'll be the topic of a future episode.
Until next time, happy sleuthing.